So we are talking about the movie City of Dead Men, directed by Kirk Sullivan. Now let me ask you a question, my friends. Have you ever watched the movie The Lost Boys and thought, I really enjoyed this movie, if only if it didn't have vampires in it? Well, I'll tell you, this is the movie for you. It pretty much feels like the original Lost Boys movie. Basically, you have this guy called Michael, as you'd probably expect, and he's this traveller. And he's basically been on the kind of living off the street for the last kind of couple of years. On a side note, for a guy who's living off the street, he looks surprisingly well groomed and well nourished. But I'm not saying anything. Let's carry on. Anyway, he meets this kind of like this girl, this kind of exotic looking girl, and she introduces him to this kind of like this gang of kind of neo punks, I guess you'd call them, this kind of like street gang who are living at large, kind of like, you know, to hell with the rules type thing, and they kind of have this philosophy where, you know, if you're dead, you don't care about anything, and that's their philosophy, something along the lines of that anyway. Hence they're called the Dead Men. And of course Michael feels resistant initially, but then he's kind of like feeling obliged to kind of join them and all that sort of stuff. And then there are sort of supernatural elements in there as well. There's this kind of psychiatric hospital that they're staying in that may or may not have something to do with their past, and spooky visions, things like that. So it is pretty much a cousin of the Lost Boys, just not without the vampire bit, basically. But you do have that kind of that feel, basically, that street urchin feel, that kind of gang of youth that are kind of living on their own rules. So if you like that side of things on Lost Boys, you may want to check this one out. It's definitely a style over substance movie, I would say. This film, it actually kind of looks pretty fantastic, I've got to say. I do like the kind of the visual stylings here, everything from the kind of like the way this kind of like old abandoned hospital looks, the kind of the raves that they have all look cool. These guys all look pretty funky, even though we're supposed to believe these people are kind of living on the street, but they all look perfectly well groomed and everything, like I've mentioned, and you know, completely healthy, everything like that. But there you go. So on the style side, I think it's pretty good, and it's a sumptuous film to look at. Definitely the cinematography here, very good. There's some kind of quite cool effects as well in regards to the supernatural elements. The supernatural elements are actually minimal to this film, to be honest with you, and it kind of feels like almost like a B plot that is kind of not much to do with the main plot, but they'll kind of dovetail together at the end of the film, and it all kind of ties up, as you probably expect. But there are some kind of quite cool effects involving the kind of like the eyes and stuff like that. I won't go too much into it. I've got to say though, I found this film, like I said, style over substance. It is very cool to look at, but you feel when you kind of scratch the surface, it is just a bit showy, and it's just kind of a little bit sort of convoluted, and you know, not of its time, I would say. This certainly feels like it should have come out in a kind of a few years ago, to be quite honest with you. And you know, I think this day and age, an audience kind of questions, will people really be doing this? Will people be so quick to kind of like follow these kind of like randomers? I guess some people would, but there you go. The plot is a little bit convoluted. It does fall into some typical kind of cliches as well as the film progresses. Obviously, you know, you can, this guy is clearly a bad guy. Things like that. You know, there's certain scenes where someone turns up at a certain location, you think this is going to happen, and sure enough it does. So overall, I would say I kind of like this film for a kind of a visual treat. At the end of the day, I don't feel not a lot really happens, to be quite honest. When you watch this film, think, nah, I was kind of expecting a little bit more from this one, but it is, for what you get, I would say it's an enjoyable film, but maybe it could have been a little bit more to it. Could have been a bit more meat on the bones, I would say, with this movie. But overall, sumptuous to look at, some good stylistic choices, but that's really the best thing I can say. So overall, I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.